Hello YouTube, Fairlight here, and today we are putting together another deck guide for Broken Arrow, this time focusing on making a beginner-friendly deck for the United States faction. I already put up one deck building guide, but that guide was designed to be generic on purpose and simply cover the basics of what you need to look for in a deck, and I didn't really go over any specific units or cover them in depth. It was designed to help you put together a deck from any battle group and from any faction. But today I want to do a much more specific build because people keep requesting a more in-depth analysis of the units inside the decks. So let's hop right into it. We are going to make today's deck out of the United States Armored Brigade and Airborne Infantry. So pick those two, click create, and you can even follow along on the video right now if you want to. I already have the deck made though to save time. So let's hop into it and take a look-see. Here we are at our beginner-friendly deck. We only have two infantry recon options available to the armored and airborne combo. It is the airborne snipers and the cavalry scouts. The airborne snipers we're going to take all four of because these guys have the incredibly useful 3 stealth score and 2000 vision range. These guys have fantastic vision range, and they're very hard to spot, meaning that once you get them into position behind enemy lines or beside enemy lines watching key points, they're very unlikely to be detected. Just make sure you put them on hold fire. You will never have this squad shooting or engaging the enemy if you can help it. Their job is to sit there and watch and occasionally point a laser at an important target if you want to get a guided artillery strike or airstrike onto a specific important backline target. Their loadout we're just going to leave on default. You could put anti-material rifles on them, but again, I don't feel like spending the extra money for this. If these guys get caught, they're usually dead regardless what weapons you put on them. We're also going to bring along a pair of cavalry scouts whose stealth and vision scores aren't quite as good as the airborne snipers, but they do have a javelin missile for potentially taking out an important enemy vehicle if they happen to spot one. The truth is, I don't really use these guys all that much. The reason that they are in the deck is actually because of the vehicle options available to them. Since they are coming from the Armored Brigade, you can see that they have different vehicle options compared to the airborne snipers. So we're going to go ahead and grab this, the M3A3 CFV. We're going to upgrade the armor all the way. We're going to give it a protection system, and we're going to slap a couple of these into the deck. This is the main reason the cavalry scouts are even here. I might never even deploy the cavalry scouts, but I will deploy these Bradleys. This Bradley has 2000 vision range, and it actually has a higher than 1 stealth score. It has 1.25, which for a vehicle is not bad. It comes armed with a Bushmaster autocannon and a TOW-2 anti-tank missile. So as long as it's not a heavy tank or a main battle tank, other medium vehicles, the Bradley can take them out, and it can also terrorize enemy infantry, has active protection and a smoke system all around. It's a solid vehicle, and you can have it either supporting your infantry from behind during pushes, or you can send it around to the sides to act as a reconnaissance vehicle all on its own. With our remaining budget in the recon category, we are going to grab a pair of Grey Eagle drones and outfit them with Hellfire missiles. It's hard to spot infantry on the ground with drones because infantry tend to have higher stealth scores, but spotting enemy vehicles is usually pretty easy. So for the drone, I like to have Hellfire anti-tank missiles. If the drone happens to spot an enemy vehicle down beneath it somewhere, it can just blow them up for you and save you some headache. The Global Hawk is also another drone. This one comes unarmed, but it has a whopping 5,500 vision range, one of the longest in the game. This thing is amazing for spotting out the entire enemy army. Just don't fly it all the way over the enemy army. It will get shot down by anti-air defenses. The best use for a Global Hawk is to actually keep it probably about 1,000 meters behind your own front line. Its vision range is so long that even if you keep it behind your lines, it can still spot a large number of enemy units. It's very handy. Always take something like this if you get the option to. And then finally, with the last few bucks in the budget, we're going to grab a pair of Humvee LRA S3s. The reason we're going for this over, say, the other Humvee option is simply that this one has a laser designator and this one does not. So we go ahead and put the smoke launcher upgrade on it, grab 2 of these, and now you have a quick vehicle reconnaissance option that has an incredible 2400 vision range, which for a ground unit is really high. Air units will often have better than this, like the drones, but for a ground unit, 2400 is about as high as you're going to see on anything. So you can park one of these in the trees off to the side and they'll be your eyes and ears on the battlefield. Next, let's take a look at the infantry section. Our main go-to frontline infantry for this deck is going to be the airborne NGWS, or I am just going to call them the NGWs because it rolls off the tongue nicer, even though I know it's not the correct way to say it. The NGWs, frankly, have a technology advantage over most other infantry units. Their assault rifle has 600 meter range instead of only 400 meter range, giving them that extra edge. A 50% higher range is nothing to scoff at. In a wide open space, these guys are really hard to beat compared to other infantry. They also come with grenade launchers and even a pair of machine guns. If you bunker them down in a building somewhere, they can set up a pair of machine guns. But the real icing on the cake is the M3E1 Moz rocket launcher, which they carry 6 shots for and does 600 explosive penetration damage, meaning, in plain English, these guys can absolutely fry medium and lightly armored vehicles. They're not going to take on a tank head on. If you see an enemy main battle tank coming down the road and you're staring it down, you're probably dead. These guys will not win that fight. But any other vehicle is toast. This is what I mean by the technology advantage. They have both an incredible anti-tank rocket and they have longer range rifles. They are a fantastic bang for your buck main infantry unit. We're going to bring along 6 of them to make sure that we always have a few on standby. There is one little caveat here, which is that they're not all that great in close quarters. Even with the longer range and the higher armor penetration, which I forgot to mention, their damage per shot is not the greatest. So if you see an enemy infantry unit closing the gap and about to enter the building with them, you might want to consider pulling them back. This unit really wants to keep the enemy at arm's length and kind of abuse their range and armor pen advantages, and they lose that advantage if they're stuck fighting at point blank or in the same building. Next up, we're bringing the Stinger team. The airborne Stinger team actually carries 2 Stingers instead of just 1, so you'll notice that they are firing significantly faster. That's because there's 2 guys working together to take down the enemy aircraft, so that higher rate of fire means enemy helicopters go bye-bye. Now, we do have anti-air vehicles in the deck, but we still want to bring anti-air infantry because sometimes you can get these guys into sneaky little spots in the tree line or put them in an unsuspecting building and the enemy won't know they're there until it's too late. And if you take out an expensive chopper, that can be game-changing, especially if it's a chopper full of incoming troops and reinforcements and you shoot it down and the enemy loses everything. They're always fantastic little sucker punches for the enemy if you can pull it off. I'm also giving them a pair of Humvees to get to the front line quickly, and I am paying the extra $5 to put a machine gun on the Humvees, just because I don't like any of my vehicles going out completely unarmed. Next up, we're bringing along a pair of TOW 2B teams and a pair of weapons squads. Both of these are designed to take out enemy vehicles. The TOW 2B squad is a little bit cheaper, and it's almost exclusively here to kill enemy vehicles. The weapons squad, however, it has a little bit more variety to it. This is an 8-man squad carrying 6 rifles, also has a pair of machine guns and a pair of javelin launchers. The weapons squad is fantastic, but their weakness really is that they have to be set up to use and not moving. Then you need to post them in a building or a tree line somewhere to use either the javelins or the machine guns. They all have this little stop sign hand icon here. What this means is you can't run and gun with this unit, so they need to be stationary, which can be a little limiting. The same is also true of the TOW 2B launcher. They need to be posted up somewhere. So if they're getting pushed by enemy infantry or the enemy is deploying smoke cover and running at you, same story with the NGWs. You got to pull these squads back. But their combination of machine guns and javelin missiles means that they can threaten enemy vehicles and enemy infantry with equal measure, and a pair of weapon squads can be a fantastic deterrent against any kind of enemy push. Now, with basically all of these options so far, I've indicated that you want to keep the enemy at arm's length. You probably don't want to fight them point blank. Well, that is one of the reasons we bring the mech engineers along. These guys actually love fighting at point blank, and they are here to help stall enemy pushes if they're trying to break into the same building or dislodge your infantry. A pair of mech engineers can stop them in their tracks. They have 5 rocket launchers which can be deployed against enemy infantry, not just vehicles, and a pair of guys in each squad wielding shotguns. They love to get down and dirty, up close and personal. They are a dirt cheap squad, only costing 50 supply points, but there's only 6 men in the squad, so I recommend you deploy them in pairs. 12 guys stands a much better chance than only 6, and because they're so cheap, it's usually not that hard to deploy 2 of them. As an added bonus, 2 squads of 6 can both fit into one AMPV vehicle, which seats 12. Speaking of which, the AMPV is the real star here, and it's the main reason we're actually bringing the mech engineers. Similar to the cavalry scouts, the mech engineers just happen to have a sick ride, so that's why we include them in the deck. The AMPV can be upgraded with a Bushmaster 2 autocannon and a Javelin missile, which we are going to put both on the AMPV, so it is armed to the teeth, and anything that isn't a heavy tank is going to get absolutely shredded. We're also going to give it the Iron Fist active protection system, has smoke. This vehicle has everything you could need to help support an infantry push. Oh, also, just a quick note. I do see people falling for this. I've seen it on streams and other YouTube videos. The Weapon Squad Javelin has a minimum range of 200 meters. The TOW 2B also has a minimum range of 200 meters. So if an enemy vehicle is in your face, you actually cannot fire these. I kind of skipped over this earlier because I wasn't thinking of it, but it is important to keep these guys somewhat far back. If the enemy's getting close, the airborne NGWs are actually better. Their Moz rocket launcher does not have a minimum distance. Well, it had 2 meters, which is basically impossible for the enemy to hit. But with this, you can actually shoot a vehicle at point blank, something that these other 2 teams cannot do. I'm just bringing this up because I have seen people yelling at their troops like, why aren't you firing your javelin? Well, if the enemy is within 200 meters, they cannot. Important to keep that in mind. Once the enemy starts aggressively pushing you, the NGWs have to deal with it. All right. Next up, the vehicle section. We have the M1A2 SEP V3, which we are bringing both of, and then we have the M1A2 SEP V2, which is almost as good, and we are bringing 4 of those, and we are upgrading all of the above to the maximum level. Make sure you grab the best armor package available for what is the pride of your army and the backbone of your pushes. These tanks have 4 charges of active protection and 2 smoke canisters, along with thick armor on all sides, making them incredibly hard to kill as long as you don't get too carried away and overextend with them. You don't want to push alone with just your tanks. You will open yourself up to artillery barrages, helicopter harassment, airstrikes. Those are the things that will kill your tanks. But enemy infantry doesn't stand a chance. They will get shredded by the 4 machine guns on each of these tanks. Enemy vehicles just get giant holes punched in them by the 120mm cannon. Only the Russian T-14 Armata tank can really go toe-to-toe with these tanks. Other than that, they simply smash anything and everything that gets in their way. They are your ticket to successful pushes onto points. But again, don't be silly with them, don't clump them up, and don't overextend. Now, here in the support section, this is how you protect your valuable tanks. We are bringing along, aside from the 4 MTV logistic supply trucks, which you have to have for supplies and can also carry troops in a pinch, but realistically what we're looking for here is the anti-air defenses. The M6 SHORAD, which when you first open this menu will say M6 Linebacker. You need to upgrade it by putting the Stinger missiles on it. The M6 SHORAD is your first line of defense against enemy helicopters, and usually if you start a tank push towards enemy territory, their immediate response will be to bring out helicopters to try and stop you. This is your answer to those helicopters. The M6 SHORAD has 12 Stinger missiles and it has a radar available. 4 is probably a little bit overkill. You don't really need 4 of them, but again, this is a beginner deck. I'm assuming that people will make mistakes while they're playing and they may lose vehicles left and right, so I put a couple of extra M6s into this build to help you deal with enemy choppers in case you lose one while you're learning the game. The M6 SHORAD is an absolute terror, tears up enemy helicopters like there's no tomorrow, and you keep this close behind your tanks to make sure that your tank pushes are not destroyed by enemy helicopters. You also have a pair of PVOD systems. The PVODs are also quite good at tearing up enemy helicopters in a pinch, but the real reason we have them with us is to shoot down incoming enemy missiles, like cruise missiles. You will typically deploy your PVADs close to your Patriot to help defend your Patriot if the enemy is using anti-radiation missiles, which are designed to destroy your radar systems. The PVADs is there to basically run interference for the Patriot. You'll set them up quite close to each other and just leave the radars turned on, unless your enemy is constantly hunting your radar with seed planes. The Patriot is your answer to enemy aircraft with a whopping 4,000 meter range. It's actually an incredibly useful tool for shooting down incoming cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and aircraft. The weakness: the Patriot only carries 2 missiles by default. We're paying for the upgrade to being 4 missiles, which is still a little low. I usually will just sit these guys on a supply depot, which is kind of breaking one of the cardinal rules of Broken Arrow. You don't want your missile launchers and artillery to sit directly on supply depots, but because of how little ammo this thing carries, I find that I often don't have a choice. If the enemy sees where the missiles are coming from, they may try to artillery strike your supply depots, so you have to keep this thing far behind your front line, out of range, so that it's not as easily threatened by enemy artillery. You do have the Slam Ram as an alternate option, but this thing has a full 1,000 meter lower range than the Patriot, so I prefer using the Patriot even if the Slam Ram is does have a couple advantages in other categories, but for me it's the Patriot all day. Next up, we have the GMLRS, this incredibly damaging and highly destructive rocket artillery. Simply rains death on your opponent at insane ranges. We are upgrading it to use cluster warheads, which are designed for vehicles specifically. You are looking for enemy supply depots, enemy armor that has been parked or hidden in a tree, enemy tank pushes, that sort of thing. This will absolutely ruin their day. Cluster warheads are not particularly effective against infantry, though if you catch infantry in the open, this will definitely hurt them. If they are bunkered up in a building, though, forget it. Don't waste your rocket barrages on entrenched infantry in buildings. It simply doesn't have the punch to do that. Their munitions are laser guided, so if you have your recon troops, whether it's your snipers or your Humvees that are hidden off to the sides, and you're able to get a laser designation on an enemy target, you can steer these cluster bombs right onto them and absolutely destroy them. This thing is a menace, and it destroys even the heaviest tanks in the game. Now, if you wanted to bring along some more traditional artillery, you do have access to the Paladin, and when you're feeling up to it, you can remove a pair of SHORADs from the deck to free up some budget, and you could bring along a pair of Paladin artillery systems to give you more options. This would be much more effective at dislodging infantry from structures. For now, though, we're going to leave the 4 SHORADs on there. And that brings us to our own helicopters. For our helicopter section, we are bringing 2 Kiowa warriors, 2 longbows, and 1 Chinook. The Kiowas are mainly here to act as a fast response to enemy choppers who are trying to flank you. The M6 SHORADs and the PVAD systems, along with your anti-air infantry, should handle the majority of enemy helicopters, but some players like to be sneaky and they try to circle around and attack your supply line or hunt down your artillery pieces that can't defend themselves. If you see an enemy chopper doing something like this, you deploy your own Kiowas in response. The Kiowas, thanks to their long vision range and decent stealth score, oftentimes get the first shot off because the enemy choppers cannot see them coming. Make sure you take the Optronic system to help with this. That's why their vision range is so high. Normally they are at 1200. Optronic system bumps it up to 2400. Thanks to this extra vision range and high stealth score, you can sneak up on an enemy chopper and unload your Stinger missiles into them before they know what's happening, and you will win 90% of the time with this kind of chopper versus chopper action. The longbow is your anti-vehicle answer. If the enemy is coming at you with a large number of ground vehicles or a few heavy tanks, the Hellfire missile that comes packaged with a longbow does incredible damage to ground vehicles and is an absolute terror. When I talked about helicopters messing up your tanks earlier, this is what I meant. If the enemy has a chopper like this will destroy tanks, will destroy troop transports, supply trucks, artillery pieces, and in most cases it only needs 1 shot to do it against anything smaller than a heavy tank. Bring these along, you won't be sorry. They will just make an absolute mockery of enemy armor. Now, you do have an option here to take a few less missiles. 16 is admittedly probably more than you really need. You could swap some of those Hellfires for Hydra rockets instead. That gives this chopper the ability to also harass enemy infantry. Just be careful about getting too close. You don't want to go into range of enemy anti-air. Lastly, we have the Chinook. The Chinook is a fantastic transport chopper, carries 12.5 tons of supplies, so you can set up supply depots near your front line, or you can transport in troops with it. It seats up to 32 men. That will allow you to bring 4 full-size squads of infantry, of your airborne NGWs or your weapon teams. You can load this thing up with a whole bunch of reinforcements and get them to the front line very quickly. And last but not least, our own aircraft section. First up, we have our air-to-air fighter, which is the F-15C Eagle. The Eagle we are outfitting with 4 AIM-120 AMRAAMs on the fuselage, and in the wing pylons we're bringing 2 more AIM-120 AMRAAMs along with 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders. The Sidewinders have much shorter range than the AMRAAM, but the Sidewinder fires quickly and turns quickly, so it's very useful if your plane gets too close to an enemy fighter in the air. Whoever has the Sidewinders typically wins that, whereas the AMRAAMs, with their 7,000 meter range, are much better for shooting halfway across the battlefield to take out their planes. Notably, the Sidewinder can also target a helicopter, so if the enemy has an important chopper, usually a transport chopper that you suspect is full of troops, and you really need to deal with it right now, you can deploy the F-15C to try and chase it down and use the Sidewinders to get rid of it. We're only including 1 Eagle in the deck, only 1 F-15C Eagle specifically, because this is a beginner deck and it's designed for use while you're learning the game. In low elo lobbies, I really didn't see a whole lot of air-to-air dogfights, so I don't think you're going to need more than 1. So for now, we're just going to leave it at the 1. Next, we have our dedicated bomber, which is the F-15E Strike Eagle. For our payload on this bomber, we're going to go to the fuselage and select 12 Mark 82 Snake Eyes, and then on the wing pylons, we're going to bring along 8 CBU-87 cluster bombs, also known as Rock Eyes. This combination of Snake Eyes and Rock Eyes gives you high explosive bombs and cluster bombs, so it will effectively deal with both infantry and tanks, and when you go in for a bombing run, your plane will drop both types at the same time, allowing you to devastate everything in a small area. It's extremely effective against basically every kind of target. I love this combination. It's also extremely effective because both of these bomb types are high drag bombs, which means your plane can be flown at a low altitude to drop these bombs. You don't have to stay high up in the air, you can actually hug the ground, and that makes it much harder for enemy anti-air to shoot you down on the way in. You don't need to manually adjust the altitude. Your pilot knows when you give him a bombing run order with high drag bombs, you will see the plane drop down to low altitude on its own. You do want to manually hit the afterburner, which is your Z key, to pop the afterburn. With afterburn and low altitude, it's very hard to stop this plane from getting to its destination and dropping the payload, and sometimes you'll get out alive, sometimes you won't. I typically wouldn't deploy this unless you see at least 2 high-value enemy vehicles, like a pair of tanks coming down the road. That way, if your bombing run is successful, even if the plane gets shot down, it's still a good trade, because you're taking out 600 points worth of tanks versus your 400-point plane. Now, just in case it needs to defend itself, we're also including 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders and 2 AIM-120 AMRAAMs on this aircraft, and if you really needed to support your teammates during an aerial dogfight, if there's a bunch of planes up, you can send this thing out as an air-to-air fighter. I would just prefer to send the Eagle first, because the Strike Eagle is more expensive. Excuse me. Last but not least, we have the F-15EX Eagle 2. Now, I have a somewhat unorthodox setup on this Eagle 2, and if you find this to be a bit too headache-inducing, you could always swap it. Since it's about the same cost as the F-15 Strike Eagle, you could just take 1 less Eagle 2 and 1 more of your Strike Eagles. So you have that flexibility here to pick which plane you bring more of, but let me show you what we're cooking with here on the Eagle 2. We are putting on the fuselage 2 AGM-JA SSM, the JSAMs. These are cruise missiles that have an insane 10,000 meter range and do a heavy amount of damage, 60 damage in a 90 meter blast radius. This is a very large boom coming in, and you can fire them from all the way across the screen. So as you bring this plane in, you simply click Precision Strike, pick 2 spots on the ground and fire off your cruise missiles. And then you turn around and send the plane home. You fire from so far away that you're never really in danger of getting hit by enemy anti-air, which is a good thing because this plane is expensive. We really don't want to lose it. This plane is also pulling double duty because in addition to the cruise missiles, we're also putting on 2 AGM harm missiles. These harm missiles will home in on enemy radar and will, if you catch the enemy by surprise, sometimes destroy their anti-air defenses so they can't shoot down your planes. Both your cruise missiles and your harms can be intercepted by enemy missile defenses, but that's why we're bringing 4 of them. Between the 2 harm missiles, which fire automatically, by the way, you don't have to give any kind of order. As soon as you get in range of an enemy anti-air defense, the harm will fire on its own and seek out the enemy radar. That, combined with your 2 cruise missiles, presents 4 incoming projectiles for the enemy to deal with, and if any of them get through, you're guaranteed to do lots of damage. The JSAMs you will need to manually target. These are very effective at removing infantry from buildings where they are hunkered down, and especially in low elo, people will put their infantry in buildings and just let them sit there as kind of a defensive line or perimeter, whatever. If you see that the enemy has infantry stationed in a building, call out the Eagle, send off a couple of JSAMs at the building. If your harms fire off automatically, even better. If they don't, no worries. And oftentimes you'll find yourself scoring kills on infantry and removing them for free, and then you send your Eagle back to base and refund most of the supply costs. We're also putting 4 AMRAAMs on this plane to defend itself because, again, expensive plane, we don't want to lose it. I have put AMRAAMs on all of these aircraft just in case, so no matter which plane you send out, it can defend itself against other aircraft, which I think is important in a beginner deck. And that'll just about do it. We have reached the end. I hope this deck helps ease you into the game and brings you many victories in Broken Arrow. I also hope that as you score those wins and as your own experience and judgment increases, you understand the game well enough to be able to make changes on your own. Feel free to tinker with this deck to decide what you need more of, what you need less of. That is the whole point, for you to grow as a player and make those decisions on your own. I also hope you'll check out my previous video, which is more about deck building in general and does not necessarily focus on armored and airborne, but rather general concepts that apply to all the battle groups in the game. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a lovely day.